Good morning, crypto Twitter, it's Mr. Crypto, spreading crypto with doctors showing its benefits to my generation. Shout out to all my people, Jesse needs to be included, it's really that simple. We are savage, amazed, boss, zesty, making money at the same time, spread peace. I feel empty if you don't include Gen Z, about to change the world, so y'all better get ready. Mr. Crypto, I'm never backing down, I got a wax account, you should check it out. So many NFTs, I think I lost count, and I'm only getting started, yeah, barely off the ground. Mr. Crypto, you cannot stop me, my hands are made from diamond, your hands fall like origami. Never be the boss of me, Bitcoin's all I need, when I say I'm zesty, that's just me, talking all this crypto, and yum farm, marketplace, I wanna see the more, we gotta go through cyberspace, leave this world without a trace, save me for a different day, cause we partners in the cryptos didn't stay.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Miss Teen Crypto Show. I hope everybody's having a lovely Wednesday today. I know we were live yesterday. We are live again today. We will be live again tomorrow. But if you're new to the channel, what's up? My name is Randy, also known as Miss Teen Crypto. It's nice to meet you. If you're new to the channel, make sure to like, subscribe, and share the stream out with friends. Even if you're not new to the channel, do that anyway. I want to shout out an amazing sponsor, Wax Blockchain. They're killing the game as always. Make sure to watch out for blockchain brawlers. They're going to be doing something cool coming up. But I want to jump in and waste no time with today's awesome guest, Ben Cowen, also known as Into the Cryptoverse. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to talking with you today about Bitcoin and sort of the direction that crypto is heading.
Of course, of course. I know there's a lot of fans of yours in the chat, and welcome, friends. It's nice to see you all. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel for more future zest. But today, I really want to ask you, Ben, about your life, because I know a big part of your life, obviously, is cryptocurrency, but there had to be a Ben Cowen before crypto. So what was Ben Cowen doing in college, let's say? Where did you picture your life going?
It was very different a long time ago. So back in college, I started so I went to North Carolina State because I grew up in North Carolina, and I wanted to do engineering. So I actually started as an aerospace engineer. I did that for a couple years. I worked at NASA Johnson Space Center for a spring semester. I worked at NASA Langley. I volunteered at NASA Langley for a summer and worked at taught some of the science, the space camps for the summer. And yeah, about halfway through, I decided to switch over to math and physics. So I switched over to that, and then I ended up getting a bachelor's in math, and I was going to get a bachelor's in physics as well, but I ultimately, I basically decided it wasn't worth it. So I ended up getting a minor instead because I got accepted to graduate school. Yeah. And then, that was undergrad, but because my undergrad was in math, I remember taking like a cryptography course, I don't know, junior year or something like that. I mean, this was way back in 2011. And that was when I sort of first learned about crypto, is from taking that class way back then. Now, unfortunately, I was not, I've said before, it's not like I had a lot of money to put into crypto. Yeah. I didn't put any money into crypto in, way back then, but I was at least following it back then and more interested from an academic perspective, I guess. So that was sort of my undergrad, and then I graduated in 2012.
Whoa, that's so wild. So you were interested in space at one point.
Yeah.
What
so I thought I was gonna do that. I thought I was gonna go to. At one point I thought I was gonna just go work at NASA.
No way. So what drew you to space? Like what really like enticed you to kind of go that route? Because not a lot of people do.
I guess I just thought it was really intriguing, like the idea of like, hopping on a rocket and going to the moon like we did back in the 60s. And it was always kind of weird to me how we haven't really done it since. But, once I actually got there at NASA, I realized how bureaucratic everything was and how everything moved so slowly. So, you always have these great ambitions when you're young, and then you kind of see how slowly some things can move. But yeah, I mean, I think like I just really liked the idea of space and there being a lot more out there than what we're used to. And there's like a picture where as Voyager 1 is leaving our solar system, or at least leaving, I don't remember, it was sort of like the furthest reaches that it could look back. It sort of turned around and took one last picture of the solar system. There was like one little pixel that was Earth. And It's just crazy to think about how like everything that I've known forever, everything that you've known, all the people we know, everyone who's ever lived that, is in the history books, all lived on this little tiny speck in a fairly insignificant part of the Milky Way galaxy, in a fairly insignificant part in the universe. So I think that was sort of like, a big part of the interest behind it.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we still go to the moon with Bitcoin, but that's another, way to the moon. But, I think that's so crazy too. I think about it as well. It's just like, like we're like little ants in the dirt. Like, you know what I mean? Like we're so small compared to like what's really out there. And then you fall down this rabbit hole of like, what is life? What does this all really mean? And how does this all like become like into creation? And like the universe is just so extensive. It just keeps growing. It's just, that's so fascinating to me. When did you, and then how did you find cryptography? Because I don't think that's like a very popular course. I haven't really heard of a college doing cryptography.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the like, I don't know what they call it, like elective or whatever you basically take, you take the core courses that you have to take. So like in math, you have to take algebra. I mean, not like high school algebra, right? Or middle school algebra. It's like proof-based math and that like real analysis, these types of things. So you have to take those like differential equations, calculus 1, 2, and 3, et cetera, et cetera. But there were electives that you could take, and cryptography was one of them.
Wow.
And I mean, I just remember going through that class, and at first I wasn't even that interested in it, to be completely honest. But then you start getting your homework assignments, and then you have to like, there was actually cool homework assignments because they would give you something, and then you would have to like decrypt it, and like figure out like what was the secret message. And it was always math based, right? It was a math course, so it was always a mathematical exercise, and usually you would have to do something like in some type of program like MATLAB or something like that. But that was really where the initial interest came from. But even back then, it wasn't even, I mean, if I'm being honest, like it's not like I knew that Bitcoin was going to be as big as it is today back then, right? I mean, I liked the idea, but at the time, it was only really just an idea. Bitcoin had not really taken hold, and it wasn't really until 2013 that I think it became more apparent that it was more than just a small idea. That was actually when I was in grad school, and me and some other grad students were talking about it like every single day, because we saw the pump where Bitcoin just like went crazy. I think it went to like $1,100. I know that sounds like crazy today. Like $1,100 Bitcoin is
but that was a big jump then.
Yeah, but back then it was huge. For it to be over $100, much less $1,000, and then we saw it come back down, all the way back down, and still went down even in 2014 and early 2015. Yeah, those were some really interesting times.
I think that's great. Just like 2012, 2013, just a bunch of college kids talking about Bitcoin, because even now there's still not a lot of college kids talking about Bitcoin. And for you guys to see that so early on and like at a younger age is so cool. I mean, how did you get like introduced to like Bitcoin and cryptography? Like they were just kind of like teaching you everything, and then they mentioned Bitcoin, and were they fans of Bitcoin?
They never mentioned Bitcoin. Like it was never mentioned in class. It was just sort of like I was taking the class and I was interested. I became interested in crypto in general. And a few keyword Google searches later, I mean, like you sort of learn about it. I mean, I certainly wasn't an expert at it. I wasn't, it's not like I was fully in tune with what exactly it was in the first place, but I remember, reading about it and, acknowledging its existence, and then really getting more interested in grad school. But I didn't start grad school. I started grad school in mid 2013. And that was where, I would talk about it with some of my, my fellow grad students, as we would just, because we were research assistants, so we just sort of sat around, all day in between classes. We would obviously do our work. We also talk about, interesting topics, and Bitcoin was one of them.
And when you were like looking at Bitcoin in 2013, I know you said you weren't really investing that much. When did you actually start investing in crypto, and why did you feel like Bitcoin had promise? Because I know you were watching the price action. Was it solely because of that at the time, or?
Yeah, no, I mean, I put a little bit in, but I mean, this was also while I was a student,
Yeah.
I, it's not like I had a ton of money to put into crypto. But I did a lot better in the following cycle. So the one that came after it. So like usually your first cycle can kind of wreck you,
Absolutely.
You don't really know what to expect. The second cycle, and I remember watching it come down in 2014, and there's a whole, the whole Mount Gox as well, that situation that went on back then. And it wasn't even apparent that it would ever recover. I mean, we were watching it, and in 2013, we had sort of like two blow off tops, where it had one blow off top and then it had another one. So if you sold everything at the first blow off top, you probably would have FOMO'd back in on the second one. And then it came down in 2014, and then it even kept going down in 2015. And back then, you looked at the chart, but you didn't have like the next 5 years in your head. Like, we didn't know it was going to go back up. It's easy to look at the Bitcoin chart now and make it seem like it looks so obvious that, we had bottomed in 2015, but there was no guarantee that was the case back then. And I think a lot of people were just generally confused as to why it wasn't going back up. And I wasn't very involved in the actual like social community of crypto. I more was just looking at it from the outside. I didn't have time. I was in school and had to focus on all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't really until I would say in 2016, 2017 was when it finally dawned on me that it was really here to stay, right? Like, it wasn't just a fad. It wasn't just gonna, just sort of filter into, or just go into oblivion or anything like that. But it was actually here to stay. And then I decided to start a YouTube channel in 2019. In preparation for the cycle that we just had, right, where we went up in 2020 and 2021, and then now we find ourselves again in yet another bear market, and hopefully we'll come out of it soon.
Absolutely, it's insane what's going on with this bear market. But what were you doing in like that, like I guess like 4 or 5 year hiatus before you started your YouTube channel? Where did your career take you after graduate school?
Yeah, so I did my PhD in nuclear engineering. So I switched over from math, and then I did nuclear engineering. So sort of relating back some of the physics. Like the thing about going to higher education is that the more you learn, the more you realize how stupid you are and how much you don't know.
It's true.
Like, I can say that's certainly true. Like, you get really good at one very specific topic, right? That's why it's called a PhD, piled high and deep. But you realize, like, everything else, there's so much out there that we just don't know. So you can become an expert at one very specific thing, and it's great. And so, I mean, after I graduated, I became a postdoc at a national lab. I did that for 2 years or so, and then I was a staff scientist after that. And then so I did that. I was working at a national lab, and then I started my YouTube channel about a year into my postdoc.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but at first, you have to remember, like, when I first started my YouTube channel, I was only putting out like one video every 2 weeks, or, every week. Or
it wasn't consistent.
Yeah. Because I had no dreams of it actually turning into anything, the idea of even hitting 1,000 subscribers seemed kind of ridiculous.
Wow.
So I didn't put a lot of time and energy into it in mid 2019. I just put out a few videos. Like, the first video you'll see on my channel is about Ethereum, because I thought, I was like, look, guys, ETH is at $200. Like, it's a really good price. We're down like 90% or something from the all-time high. It seems like we're heading into another bull market over the next few years. And so, but I realized I couldn't do both. Is kind of what happened. Like, I couldn't do my day job and run the YouTube channel. But it took me until I didn't actually leave my day job until January of 2021. So I was actually doing both for all of 2020. And then in January 2021, well, I decided to finally leave in December, but then my last day was in January of 2021. And then the rest is history.
Wow. So you just like handed them like your 2 weeks notice. Did they know you were in crypto like before you left, or was this kind of a surprise to everybody at work?
Well, they knew because you have to, I mean, like it could be a potential, I mean, like you have to make known any potential conflicts of interest, right? It's like if you're working on anything outside of like of your actual day job, to the scale that I was, because in 2020 my channel blew up, you have to make that known. So they knew. I mean, they knew I had a YouTube channel. They knew I was talking about crypto and interested in crypto. But when the time come, when I realized, I got to the point where I realized like I had to quit because there was this like new project and they wanted a project lead for it, and I think it was going to be me, and I just sort of realized that my heart was more so interested in talking about crypto and helping people navigate the cryptoverse. So I handed in my resignation. It was actually quite difficult because I had just worked the last 5 years to get, I mean, and maybe even before that, if you argue the undergrad went to it too, right? I mean, I'd worked for 5 years in grad school to get this job, right? To get this exact job. And it was like my dream job. And then just say bye, it was pretty difficult. And I think you also like kind of question, like, is it the right decision, right? Like what happens if this other thing fails and then you gave away the job you worked for your entire life, basically. But I mean, it's worked out relatively well, so.
Absolutely. It's worked out relatively well. I mean, wow, imagine working over a whole Bitcoin cycle to like a whole 4-year cycle to get this job you're working. And then you're like, all right, I think I got to piece out of here, which isn't a bad thing either, because you absorbed all the information, you learned a lot, you got to execute on everything you learned, and then you took that opportunity to leave. And I know you mentioned you were a little nervous in doing so, and you were nervous if you made the right decision. How long did it take you to really be sure of yourself after you left, to be like, okay, like this is the right thing to do, this is my passion, I'm pursuing this?
Yeah, I mean, my main focus was to help people navigate crypto where they sort of manage the risk. And I'm not talking about like day trading or anything like that. Like I'm not even good at that. But what I mean is like, just helping them realize that these pumps won't last forever. There's a good time to get into crypto, but there's also a good time to get out of crypto. And over the next several months, there were a lot of people that were, very appreciative of all the content that I put out. And then I actually became quite bearish on crypto back in early 2021, right after I quit my job, actually. Because, like I have all these models and stuff, and so many of them were saying like, look, it's time to sell. But, back then, a lot of us wanted to see Bitcoin go up, hit 100K.
Yeah. Laser eyes but all over Twitter.
Yeah, but I would say that was probably where it first became more real, because I was able to exit a decent amount of my crypto positions during the first pump of 2021, not the second one, unfortunately, but during the first pump of 2021. And I think a lot of other people that followed me as well. And then once it dropped, right, we dropped like 50%. It felt good, right? Like it felt really good. I'm like, all right, all these models I spent a long time working on in 2019 and 2020, at least they paid off to some degree, right? Like, we did come back down. And I think a lot of people were appreciative of that. So I think that probably made me feel pretty good. Because I knew that if I continued to do both jobs, like if I continued working my day job and doing this other thing, like I wouldn't be good at both. And that was the hard part. Like I knew I wouldn't be good at both. So in order to do anything, I had to choose. So yeah, I would say probably just receiving nice messages. Of course, for every 100 nice messages, there's always one that's not. But you sort of just learn to tune those out.
Yeah, you can't listen to the haters online, and I commend you for doing what you did. It really takes a lot of courage to do that. A lot of people wouldn't take that risk of leaving that stable 9 to 5 that they've worked so hard for to go and pursue something in crypto, where at the time and even still now, there's a lot of doubt from like the mainstream media. Do you see like any similarities between, the bear markets you saw previous to the bear market that's going on now? And do you see more blood in the streets, basically?
Yeah, that's a good question. Every bear market like you could argue that each bear market kind of has its own characteristics and they somewhat can feel different, but at the end of the day, they all feel really the same, like the same sentiment in terms of like Bitcoin being dead. No one cares about crypto, that sort of stuff, where the general idea is that, the people came and then they left and now we're just sort of in a wasteland of crypto and everything's going to die. This is pretty normal. These are pretty normal emotions to experience in a bear market. And honestly, I think they're good. I think it's just a good cycle to go through because it then ultimately sets us up for the crypto winter to thaw and for us to go back into a bull market. I think I would argue that the main difference right now in this bear market that we did not have in the last few bear markets was we have high inflation right now. So we didn't really have that in 2014 and 2018. So I don't, the Federal Reserve, they were not nearly as hawkish as they are today. So they're hawkish today because we have to fight inflation. We need to get that back under control before we can really have another sustained period of economic expansion. And so that's my main concern. I just want inflation to come back down as quickly as possible, because if it can come down quickly, then I don't see any reason why we can't have another bull run, in 2024 or 2025 timeframe. I mean, normally after the bear market, you then go sideways for a year, right? Like approximately a year. So whenever we do come out of the bear market, if it's over or if it's not over, we still have a period of sideways movement where you can chop up. I mean, in 2019, Bitcoin did go up 4x. So there still can be gains to be made, but I think that's sort of the biggest question mark right now is how long will inflation stay high? And that's, I think that's one reason why a lot of investors remain somewhat cautious. And also, I mean, if you compare the drawdown with Bitcoin in this market or in this bear market, I think so far it's only gone down about 75% or so, which is a pretty big drop. I mean, I'm not trying to say that's not a big drop. That is a big drop, but we have seen bigger ones, right?
Yeah, like 90%.
Yeah, like the first one was 94%, the second one was 87%, the third one was 84%. So I think the biggest question on a lot of investors' minds right now is, well, is a 74% drop, is that sufficient for the bear market, or do we need another capitulation like we saw at the end of 2018 and like we saw, at the end of the 2014 bear market? But that capitulation finalized at the very beginning of 2015. So probably makes sense for people to be hedged either way, right? Like, you don't want to, for sure say the bottom like is 100% in, because, what if you're wrong, right? Like, what if we like, and this is the mistake I made, and these are mistakes I've made in the past, and 2014 and 2018. And 2018, I started buying a lot of altcoins in Q3, and then they dropped 80% in Q4. So I think it makes sense to be cautious, but I think certainly you could probably, you could find long-term value even at these prices in certain coins. But remember, a lot of coins will never see new all-time highs. So I mean, certainly a few will, but a lot sort of just go into oblivion, and then we have a new set of cryptocurrencies for the next bull run.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because I was even watching Fox Business yesterday with a clip with Charles Payne. And he was saying how like a bunch, I think there were over like 12,000 coins or tokens that aren't even being traded in over a month. So it's like, I think, of course, things are going to go and get filtered out, but I think it's just going to happen naturally. So like, I know like, the gov is really pushing all these securities and things like that on us right now. But I think a lot of things are just going to fade on their own. And how do you feel about trading right now? Because I know you look at charts a lot. How do you feel that the charts are helping you, or are the charts maybe not something we should be looking at as much during this type of time?
I mean, I think the charts are relatively useful. I mean, I can pull up a couple charts.
Feel free.
Sort of show what I'm looking at. So the main charts that can you see my screen over here, the charts?
Yep, we're all good.
Yeah, so sort of the main things I'm looking at are just managing risk in general. So I have this indicator dashboard where I figure out what is the overall risk on crypto in general. And, I've sort of segmented it into three separate things. So we have price risk, on-chain risk, and social metrics risk. So I like the social metrics risk because this is not something I've seen anywhere else. But if I click on them, like if I click on them, you can kind of see where we currently are in relation to prior bear markets. So like the on-chain risk for Bitcoin is currently at 0.106. And this is why I think, it does make sense to proceed with a little bit of caution in case we do have that, that next leg down like we have seen in prior bear markets. But the other way to look at this, a more optimistic way would be to say, well, we are at 0.1 risk. There's no guarantee it has to go lower. Therefore, for long-term investors, you can still likely find value at these prices, even if it's not the bottom, right? I think that's the main argument that you could look at. If you were buying Bitcoin when the on-chain risk was 0.1 in the past, it didn't always mean the bottom was in, but it usually meant we were getting relatively close to the bottom, okay?
Yes.
And then, so that's the on-chain risk. And you'll note that the on-chain risk is made up of several different indicators, such as like the MVRV Z-score, the Peel multiple, transaction fees, et cetera. Like it's made up of a lot of different things. We also have the social risk, which I think is relatively interesting. And you can see the social risk is also coming down. Now, this is, I think, really indicative of just sort of retail sentiment dying off in the bear market. And we see this every single bear market. I mean, you can see that it happened over here in 2018. Retail sentiment died off. And then down here was really some great opportunities on the altcoin market. I mean, the altcoin market had been absolutely hammered at this point in 2019. And that was one of the reasons I started my channel in 2019, was because I saw that the altcoin market had been absolutely destroyed. And I was like, look, guys, I know no one believes in this stuff anymore, or a lot of people don't, but like, this is a really great time to get in when literally no one cares about crypto. And you can kind of see that we're heading that direction.
I was going to say, yeah, I kind of see a lot of similarities, especially with like market sentiment as well. Like a lot of people aren't trading tokens right now, and it might be a nice entry point.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're seeing the social risk go down as well. And then, of course, there's also the price risk, which I'll just pull up very briefly. You can see it's already at really historic lows when you incorporate all these things. So then the nice thing is I created a summary risk metric, which accounts for all three of these things. So if you click on that, you can see it includes the price metrics, the on-chain risk, the social risk, and then this is where we currently are. So, the way I navigate the cryptoverse is to just say, it's all about what is the current risk on the market. And I look at this chart and I say, look, there is some value to be had at these prices, but it doesn't mean we can't have another leg down. And some, you could argue that the social risk is the main thing that's keeping these things elevated. So the more optimistic view would just be that Bitcoin goes sideways for a year and that retail sentiment dies, but we don't have to go to a lower price. That would probably be the more bullish case. Of course, the more bearish case is that as social sentiment goes down, altcoins bleed against Bitcoin, and then we find those true amazing opportunities like we did in 2019 in the altcoin market. So I'm hoping for that. I mean, I'm hoping that in 2023, we see some really good deals on altcoins with respect to their Bitcoin valuations.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are talking about the BTC ETH charts and how it's just a little, I guess, a little ugly there. Do you watch like altcoins versus Bitcoin a lot? Do you think that's something that we should be paying attention to more? Because I mean, a lot of these things that you're showing me now, a lot of people haven't brought up to me before, like how you use the certain metrics here.
Yeah, honestly, I think that ETH Bitcoin is important to follow. And I'll show you something that it was really eye-opening when I realized it, half a year ago or so. And I actually didn't.
Yeah, that looks scary.
Yeah, but look at, so here's Bitcoin USD. So if you just look at this really quick, you'll remember we had this distribution phase back in 2021. I remember this Wyckoff distribution. And then we sort of had a double pump for a secondary distribution phase. Okay, so can you see the Bitcoin chart?
Yes.
So that's Bitcoin USD. So you have these 4 peaks followed by a secondary distribution phase. And we're essentially seeing the same thing play out on Ethereum's Bitcoin valuation, right? So you have your 4 peaks, and then we had the merge that got us to our secondary distribution phase. So, and if you go to my channel, like literally I put out videos leading into the merge saying that this is just simply a secondary distribution phase and that we will likely go back down. Now, admittedly, I did not even think we were going to get this pump. Okay, so my strategy, the receipts are all there. I mean, at least on the on some of the
YouTube.
Telegram channels. So I actually traded a lot of my ETH to Bitcoin, like right here at around 0.0749. And then it went down immediately. So I felt really smart. I'm like, all right, this worked out really, really well. But unfortunately, I got too greedy and I didn't actually buy any. I still had some Ethereum. I still had some. It's not like I sold all of it, but I watched it go back up to slightly higher than the price I had sold it at. But I actually just used this as an opportunity to sell more of Ethereum back to Bitcoin, because my general expectation was that the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation was going to go down a lot. And there's one more chart I want to show you on this, because I think it's also really eye-opening, and I talk a lot about it.
Yes, please. Everyone
yeah, a lot
in
of
the
people
chat.
don't really like my commentary on the Bitcoin dominance. They don't really think it's that useful of a metric. But one of the things that you can look at, though, is the Ethereum dominance overlaid with the Bitcoin dominance. And you'll notice that we essentially did the same exact thing last cycle, where the Bitcoin dominance sort of bottomed at around 39 to 40% at the very end. And at the same time, the Ethereum dominance went back up to around 20 to 21%, sort of like the last hurrah before it finally came down. So I think the path of least resistance over the next, say, 6 months, 12 months or something, is for the Ethereum dominance to continue coming down and the Bitcoin dominance to continue going up. But then we'll likely have, a similar type thing occur, where in 2023, Ethereum makes more sense than Bitcoin in terms of risk reward, because at that point the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation could be a lot lower, and therefore it makes more sense from a risk management point of view to start getting back into Ethereum.
Whoa, this was alpha on top of alpha. And do you look at past cycles when looking at pairs as well, would like you would with the Bitcoin chart in general? Because I know a lot of traders, they look at certain points in time and see if it correlates in any way.
Yeah, I mean, I look at a lot of the things from the last cycle. I think you always have to remember that history doesn't repeat itself identically. There's always sort of nuances. There's always differences in each cycle. Like this cycle, it wasn't a blow off top. It was sort of just two distribution phases. And then because of that, I think it's taking longer for people to lose interest in this bear market. By this point in 2018, people had already lost interest. It was by October 2018, there wasn't really much going on in crypto. And by the time we had the final capitulation, it sort of brought interest back into the cryptoverse, because we dropped 50% in a couple of weeks. Right now, there still seems to be at least some interest. I mean, I showed you the social metrics. We're still at relatively elevated. I mean, we're at 0.3 risk on the social risk. So we're somewhat low, but we're still high compared to where we were at the same time in 2018. So I think it's useful to look at prior cycles to sort of guide you, but not to say that it has to play out in the exact same way.
I agree. A lot of people are calling for 10K Bitcoin. Other people are calling for 30K Bitcoin. I don't know, because there's so much adoption going on here. There's constantly a bunch of institutions coming into crypto every day. So why all this bearish news? And do you think that could you picture an 8K Bitcoin? Could you picture, a 30K Bitcoin next? Are we going to have a big pump or a big dump incoming?
It's a really good question. I will say that short-term moves are very difficult to predict, and I'm not good at predicting what happens in the short term.
Yeah.
But with that said, I think the main things that are concerning right now are just sort of the macro environment that we're in, and whether when will the Fed pivot, and will they push us into a recession before they pivot? And obviously, there's an argument to be made that we're already in a recession, but unemployment still has not gone up yet. So there's still academic arguments against the recession as well. So I think in the short term, you could really see anything. I mean, I don't think Bitcoin's about to go to 8K, but could we put in a lower low? It's certainly possible we could put in a lower low than 17.5K. I mean, the Dow Jones, NASDAQ, S&P 500, they all put in lower lows recently from their June lows. So there is certainly a risk that Bitcoin could also put in a lower low. But you should also remember that if we do put in a lower low, that would be a very convincing market cycle bottom if we haven't already put it in. Okay, so if it's not already in, then the next low would be a much more convincing one, and that becomes a real, I think, a big discussion as to are we going to bounce off of that level and sort of chop for a while and then go back up. A 30K Bitcoin, while it certainly seems unlikely in the short term, it is possible. I mean, there is a certain everyone on Twitter right now is watching this sort of like downtrend line on the Bitcoin USD chart on the linear scale, and I believe we just broke through it. So there is a little bit of optimism right now. I can actually show it if you want me to.
Yeah, let's do it. Guys, in the chat, if you are here, make sure you smash those likes, fam. I don't know what we're doing. Smash the likes. There's 115 people here. Smash those likes. Be nice. Be my friend. Go on, Ben. Share your screen.
So I mean, I'm not really much for linear scales on Bitcoin charts, but I haven't even talked about this on my own channel before, but a lot of people are sort of looking at this trend line right here and noting that we've, maybe you could argue this is the candle who could, finally breaking out from below this trend line. So if this is, if a lot of people are watching this and we do see, like the major stock indices sort of crank higher, and we don't look at this from like a bearish bias, but say we look at it from more of a neutral stance, then we could argue that this is sort of our demand zone down here.
Ooh.
And this is our supply zone up here. So, I mean, look, I think best case scenario over the next like month or two, like the best case scenario is a pump back up to the 200-day moving average, which is actually where we got rejected in March of 2022. So you can see the 200-day is sort of slowly coming down here. So I'd say best case scenario would be like a pump back up to that level. It could be like 25K, 26K, maybe 27K, depending on how quickly it occurs. This would be the best case scenario I could imagine. But I will say that even if that does happen in the short term, it's still likely not going to lead to an immediate sustained breakout back to 50K.
Yeah.
Like 2023 is likely going to be a lot of choppy price action. And that's sort of like a necessary part. So the bear markets are a necessary part. And then you typically go sideways for a year to sort of like absorb everything and to sort of confirm, okay, we are at the bottom. And then we sort of build off that base. Right now, we're still trying to figure out if the bottom is in or not, rather than, being super committed, I think, to a long accumulation phase. So there's a lot of, I would say there's a lot of uncertainty, but I will say I am fairly optimistic for, later on in 2023 for altcoin accumulation. I think we're going to see really similar opportunities like we saw back in, back in 2019 when I first started my channel. So for people who missed out, just try to stick around for a little bit longer and you'll probably have similar types of opportunities.
Wow, that's alpha right there. I love seeing that. I love like when I could see like the charts and everything like that and just like get like kind of clarity and explanation. Sorry guys for the glitch over here. Had to make sure we were right over here. But yeah, I can't believe that. It's funny because like if you look at like the sentiment on Twitter, like especially the recent bull run, right? Everyone had laser eyes when we were at 60K, we're going to 100, and then we have this dip here and now everyone's like, grr, I'm a bear now. We're going to 10 or 8K Bitcoin, and then like, either way, maybe what everybody's saying just doesn't happen. I feel like that's the way it goes a lot of the time, but who knows? I think, of course, like you said, history may not always repeat itself. So hopefully we saw the bottom. Hopefully the bottom's in and we could all go get our Lambos soon. But Ben, how do you feel about the outlook on crypto in general, the future of adoption here? Because I mean, I'm hearing institutions come in every single day. There's always another exchange, another person buying Bitcoin, another ETF coming out here so institutions could have another way into Bitcoin. How do you feel about adoption?
I think the main thing inhibiting further adoption, I mean, there is certainly adoption going on, as you say. I think the main thing inhibiting further adoption is just like more clear-cut regulations on crypto. This is something that has been plaguing us forever. We don't know, what it is we're buying. Are they securities? Are they not securities? What are they? And listen, I mean, like if someone like me has these concerns, then major institutions are going to have these concerns amplified, 10,000 times, because they don't want to go and buy a lot of random cryptocurrencies if they don't know what it is they're buying, right? Like if they don't know, is it a security? And if it is a security and the altcoin that you're buying is not registered as a security, that's a huge risk to take on, right? Because we saw what happened with Ripple and XRP over the last bull market. I mean, XRP was it a top coin? I think it still is a top coin, but it was it was in the top coins. But then the SEC sued Ripple, or the SEC was going after Ripple, and I think Ripple took the fight to them. Actually, is probably a better way to phrase it. But look, I mean, it was one of the few altcoins that did not put in a new all-time high during the last bull market, and arguably it was because of this sort of uncertainty as to what's going on with these, with regulations and whatnot. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. So I do think there's a lot of crypto adoption. I think that it's going to take some regulations coming. And I know that I actually just had a guy from Coin Bureau on my channel recently, and we spent like an hour talking about crypto regulations. So there's there's certain regulations over in Europe that are actually looking somewhat optimistic for crypto. And in the United States, we still don't have a whole lot of clarity on what things are. So I think my hope is that we can spend the next year getting a little bit more clarity on what's what and who's who in the cryptoverse, so that by 2024, 2025, we can go through another period of expansion in the cryptoverse. And by that point, I think you'll see even bigger fish. I kind of think we're like in a pond, but we don't really have our little outlet to the ocean yet, where all the big fish are. And the reason is because we just simply don't have clear-cut regulations in crypto. So that's probably the biggest thing. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. There are a lot of people coming in. There's news every single day. BlackRock has obviously gotten interested in crypto during this bear market. And it's funny because some of the major banks, they're bullish in the bull market, and then they think crypto's a scam in the bear market.
That's hilarious. It's so true.
Yeah. But I mean, this is just sort of how it always goes, right? These are sort of natural or recurring emotions that always that pop up every single bear market, and I'm sure in the next bull market everyone's going to be happy again, and nothing's going to be wrong with crypto, or at least no one's going to care to listen to any of the bad news anymore. Just like no one cares right now about the good news, right? I mean, how many positive events have we had in 2022? But for crypto in general, but just simply no one cares about it because it's just a technical bear market.
Absolutely. You're so right on that. You're so right. People are just greedy as heck, man. Everyone's got to get over their emotions. Stop trading with emotions. Just stay calm and hodl on. We're all going to make it, guys. Stop stressing. I see you guys in the chat stressing. Don't stress. Just smash the like and subscribe. We're all going to be okay. Guys, we have to be careful. Listen to Ben's Alpha. Guys, if you have not subscribed to Ben's channel, I'm going to drop it here. Ben, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. What do you think you can share with the audience? It could be, about trading. It could be about, life. It could be about education, whatever is in your heart. What would you like to share with everyone, and how can everybody find you?
So everyone can find me just my YouTube channel and Twitter. If you just search my name or Into the Cryptoverse or something like that, you should be able to find me. But probably I would say if this is your first bear market, the emotions that you're feeling are very similar, and we've all felt them before. And I think it's only natural to question crypto during a bear market. It's only a natural thing to go through. But if history is any indication, and it has been for quite some time, those that just simply stick around, that's the secret to all this. I mean, there's so many fancy charts I could pull up to show you why over the next year is a fairly attractive time to really get into crypto. I could show you 1,000 charts that would make that case. But the true secret is simply time. Some of the people that do the best in crypto are those that buy something and then they forget about it for the next 3 years and then they come back. So just try to be patient, and I think patience will ultimately be rewarded, even if we still have some choppy waters for the next 6 to 12 months.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for saying that. I think a lot of people need to hear that. Everybody's impatient. Everyone wants 100x. Everybody wants to go buy a Lambo. I get it, guys. Just calm down. We're all going to get there. We just have to stay patient. Patience is so key in this space. Guys, thank you again for joining me today. Much love to you all. If you haven't yet, please smash the likes on this video. I see so many of you here. Make sure to hit that like. Make sure to subscribe. I'm going to be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern, and of course next week with a bunch of new shows. Thank you so much, Ben, for joining me today. You're really amazing. I hope to have you back soon to talk about more charts and more life, because you really taught me a lot today. I really appreciate it. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. And as always, don't forget, stay zesty, friends. Peace.
Good morning, crypto Twitter, it's Misty Crypto, spreading crypto with options showing its benefits to my generation. Shout out to all my people, Jesse needs to be included. It's really that simple. We are savage, amazed, boss, zesty, making money at the same time, spread peace. I feel empty if you don't include Gen Z. About to change the world, so y'all better get ready. Misty Crypto, I'm never backing down. I got a wax account, you should say it out. So many NFTs, I think I lost count.